Hey, what's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be going over the best builds for Elite Sanctuary Onslaught Focus Farm. This video is an update to my previous Focus Farm video on the Beasts of Sanctuary update. Now that we've had a little bit of time to play around with ESO, it's definitely become apparent that this is the preferred way to farm Focus over Adaro Stealth Exterminate. And especially since they changed melee weapons to no longer penetrate through walls, the Adaro Exterminate method is even less consistent than it was before. And with ESO, not only can you farm Focus, but you can also get Radiant Relics as rewards, as well as items that are worth lots of Platinum, making, in my opinion, ESO an overall more enjoyable experience, with actually useful rewards. And because my previous videos showcased using Link Trinity to farm Focus,
In the arms of the angel.
I wanted to create this video to update the best methods to farm Focus in ESO, after Link Trinity got gutted. So for this video, I'm going to show off my top 3 choices for farming Focus in Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. To make it so this video is not an hour long, I've simply just shown Zone 8 for each of these builds. And then at the end, on the mission results screen, I'll show how much Focus I got with just normal lenses, and then I'll do the calculations for both Greater, Eidolon, and if you have an Affinity Booster. I'll also talk a little bit about how much Focus you should expect per zone, because again in ESO, the zones change every week, and depending on what tile you get and what enemy type you're going to have, your Focus gain can vary wildly. But now that that's out of the way, let's take a look at the first build, Saryn. This should come as a surprise to no one, but Saryn is the queen of ESO. She's basically able to carry an entire run to Zone 8 by herself. And for Focus, she's one of, if not the best Warframe for farming Focus in ESO. This is the Saryn build that I would use for farming Focus in ESO. It's a high range, medium strength, medium duration build that focuses on you casting your 1 when you need to and keeping your 3 up constantly. If you want a more detailed look at this build, I'd suggest checking out my Saryn 3.5 video. The only thing I'll say here for ESO is that having both Corrosive Projection and Regenerative Molt are a must for me. Regenerative Molt keeps you alive, and any build, it doesn't really matter what you're using, if you're in ESO, you should be running Corrosive Projection. If you have a full squad of people running this, it'll remove all enemy armor, and it's going to make it so much easier. This aura is one of the best DPS increases you can get. And as for Arcanes, I'm running Arcane Guardian and Arcane Energize. You can run whatever Arcanes you have available to you, and they're certainly not required for doing this, but Guardian gives me a little survivability, and Energize keeps my energy up. So when you're playing Saryn in ESO, you basically just want to cast your 1, cast your 3, and then start killing things. As long as you're maintaining her 3 Toxic Lash, you'll spread your spores simply by hitting an enemy. In each of these examples, I'm only using the Warframe with an Atterax, but if you want to use different weapons, you certainly can. Just make sure that whatever you're using is rank 30 and has a focus lens on it. And don't be afraid to recast your spores if you run out of targets. This will happen more often when there's multiple DPS frames in the mission. I want to mention here that the focus gain in this zone was particularly high, and I generally got somewhere between 5 to 6k per zone, and on good zones like this I got a lot more. If your focus gains aren't super consistent, don't worry too much. That's just part of ESO in general, and each week it's going to be different. If you do have friends to play with, or are playing with a full organized squad that has 4 corrosive projections and a couple DPS frames, you're going to see even higher gains in this. It just depends what your setup is, and for this video, I'm just assuming that most people are going to be queuing solo. And again, if you want to learn more about the build I'm using, you can check out my Saryn 3.5 video. But hopefully this is pretty self-explanatory. And even though you are doing corrosive ticks to the enemies with your spores, you still want to be running corrosive projection to ensure that it's easier for both you and your teammates to kill as many enemies as quickly as possible in the first 45 seconds while you have the focus buff. I'll skip ahead real quick as we get kicked out of the zone. So in total, I got about 89,000 focus with 2 normal lenses on my Atterax and Saryn Prime. If I had a booster or better lenses equipped, this would be how much focus I gained. My number 2 frame for farming focus in ESO is Equinox. With Equinox's nuke build, you can destroy lots of enemies with slash damage. To do this, you channel Equinox's Day Form's 4th ability, Maim, to stack up slash damage, and then release it all at once. For this build, you don't need power strength. The only thing you really care about is range and then channeling efficiency. So that means you want to reach the 175% efficiency cap and have at least 100% duration to reach Equinox's Maim's minimum 0.88 energy per second drain. And again, I'm using corrosive projection here because it is basically required for farming focus in ESO. I cannot stress enough how good this aura is for Onslaught. And then again, I'm running Arcane Guardian and Arcane Energize, but if you don't have these Arcanes, don't worry about it too much. If you don't have an Energize, you might struggle with energy a little bit, but it shouldn't be too bad if you run a focus school like Zenric. For Equinox in ESO, as you or your teammates kill enemies while your 4 is active, it will increase the Maim counter in the top right corner of the screen. The number at the top here is the amount of slash damage you're going to deal to each enemy when you deactivate your 4. So the way I play this is I put on my 4, I kill a few enemies, and once I've reached a number that I think will kill most of the enemies on the map, I deactivate my 4 to kill them. Hopefully this is pretty simple. The reason you don't want power strength here is because it doesn't scale up the damage you accumulate with Maim. The only thing that will add damage to Maim is when you or your teammates kill enemies. And because Maim is based on enemy health, this nuke Equinox build scales very well with all content, making it very good for ESO. Although it does take a little bit of time to ramp up at the beginning, which is why I don't have it at the number 1 slot. That and Saryn is just easy to use in general. Equinox can also struggle with some energy problems if you don't have Arcane Energize or something like an EV Trinity in your parties. So just watch your energy drain and be careful when you're activating and deactivating your Maim. And on that note, you can't use your 4th ability twice within 10 seconds, or Samaris will lock it down for 15 seconds. Meaning that if you spam it too much in the first 45 seconds, you're going to get locked out of your ability and you're going to lose focus. So just be aware of that while you're playing with Equinox. Overall in this run I got almost 50,000 focus. I would say the focus gains here were particularly low because my teammates weren't killing very many things, thus lowering the total amount of affinity and focus that we gained. And again, here are the values I would have gotten if I had either better lenses or a booster. The last build I want to talk about is Mesa. Mesa is my number 3 frame for ESO focus farm simply because she's so energy hungry. Especially when you zone into a new zone on Onslaught, having enough energy to channel her 4 can be pretty tough. But this is my basic Mesa build. If you're curious about this build in more detail, I'd suggest checking out my Mesa Peacemaker video. As far as musts for this build, again, corrosive projection, and then you really want Mesa's waltz. If you don't have this augment, then Mesa is far less effective in Onslaught, because Samaris is going to lock you out from your 4 and prevent you from using Peacemaker. As for my arcanes for this, I'm using again Arcane Energize for energy, and then Arcane Velocity for pistol fire rate. This is the Regulators build you'll see me using in the video. It's pretty basic. I've just gone for damage, crit, multi-shot, and then radiation with some fire rate. If you have any questions about this, let me know. When using Mesa in ESO, Mesa's Waltz is very important because it allows you to walk around and roll to reposition to enemies. As you can see here, I ran out of energy almost immediately and was forced to melee enemies in order to find more energy orbs. This can be rough in the first 45 seconds as a Mesa, especially if you don't have Energize. And again is why I ranked her at number 3. But in this game, I also had a Saryn with me that really helped kill enemies and let me get more focus than usual. Because Peacemakers only have a 50-meter range, you want to be positioned as close to the center of the map as possible, just so you can swing around like a turret and kill enemies as soon as they spawn, which you're seeing me do here. If you're having survivability problems as Mesa, make sure you're also keeping your 2 and 3 up, which will give you 95% damage reduction to projectiles, and cause enemies' guns to jam while they're near you. My focus gains here were pretty good, and I got about 80,000 focus for 8 rounds. Mostly that was because I was paired with a Saryn that also helped deal damage to enemies. And lastly, this is what my gains would be with other lenses or a booster. My hope is that this video will help you guys decide which build you want to take to focus farm in ESO. If you have any questions about anything I covered in the video, please leave a comment below. And if you did find this helpful, I'd appreciate it if you leave a like and subscribe for future content.